You're listening to The Voluntary Life, where you can hear ideas for finding freedom in an unfree world. Visit thevoluntarylife.com to connect with the show and hear all past episodes.
Jake Desyllas, it's really wonderful to see you. You're in the UK right now, right?
That's right. I'm in Brighton. It's great to see you too, Jeffrey.
You know that it's July 4th here in the US.
I do, yeah, absolutely.
I don't know.
Not sure what that really means.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it means. It means, I don't know what it means. It's something. But anyway.
I guess it means you're going to get some good fireworks, right?
That's it. And it's a good excuse for a party. That's it. As long as you obey all the rules. So we've got now coming out next week an exciting guide that you've written on negotiation. And it's building off of a book that you're offering for free right now on Amazon that's currently at the top of the list in terms of entrepreneurship studies and things. What's the name of the book, and tell me about it?
Yeah, it's called Becoming an Entrepreneur, How to Find Freedom and Fulfillment as a Business Owner. And as you say, it's currently free. So if you're watching this now, go and grab yourself a copy from Amazon.com. I'm not sure which time zone they use to mark the end of the day. I think it's Eastern Standard, but this is the last day that you can get it for free. And okay. It's number one in the entrepreneurship and small business category for free Kindle books.
Okay, that's great. Well, this is live right now being broadcast, so there'll be probably another 11 hours in which the book is free, but then after which people are welcome to actually spend their own money on it, right? So what's interesting about your book is that this is not so much a book about finance, capital, accounting, that sort of thing, but you're dealing with something that's much more substantial and you think significant, namely the sort of mental, psychological outlook of an entrepreneur, and as distinct from a wage or salaried employee.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the angle that I wanted to really cover in this book was to look at the challenge of overcoming the kind of employee conditioning that we all get especially in school, and to look at how each aspect of entrepreneurship, whether that's sales or whether that's finance or any other aspect that you tackle as an entrepreneur, how that employee conditioning has kind of given us really a bad sort of mental outlook to start as an entrepreneur, and to look at the kinds of opportunities that there are for breaking that conditioning to get freedom and fulfillment through entrepreneurship, because I really do see entrepreneurship as the most awesome personal liberation plan for everyone, and the way to really achieve freedom in your own life.
Well, the most obvious difference here is a matter of financial security. I mean, as an entrepreneur, you never really know what the future is going to hand you. I suppose that you don't that either as a salaried employee, but you have a greater degree of certainty. But with that comes a diminution of freedom and also limits on the upside. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think that's part of the kind of employee conditioning is to see risk as purely in terms of the downside and not as opportunity. There's always opportunity where there's risk. And so I think one of the real things about financing is that we think of jobs as providing security, as you say, but there are so many opportunities to creatively finance a venture these days with crowdsourced finance and so forth. And the thing that was really different for me, the thing that I really came to understand, was the opportunity to look at how to provide value so that you can finance the business through revenue itself. So you can really, by focusing on your customers, get the business to grow because you're providing something useful. Whereas I think when people think about entrepreneurship, they often think that they're going to need to find some kind of huge amount of money to get started, venture capital or something, and that they need to spend years trying to get someone to give them this massive amount of funding. My experience was actually that I did take out big loans to start my business, but I really did not know how to spend that money wisely in the first year. And part of the experience, was actually realizing, okay, well, there's a lot to be learned about how to spend the money better. And if you are in the process of building a business, you're learning that, you're getting customer feedback, and you can actually use, the sales that you're creating by serving customers, by providing something useful to finance the business itself.
That's very interesting. So, in your view, it's the finance capital doesn't make the business succeed at all. It's the idea and the devotion to the task at hand that's much more important.
Yeah, and even the idea, again, that was another idea that I had, was that you would have this great eureka moment where you have this sort of world-changing idea. But my business evolved and changed because I came to understand better what customers really needed. And everyone experiences this. As you start, what really counts is the execution. It's actually being helpful to people, providing something that people want. And I think that obviously there are businesses that do need significant capital investment to get something radically big underway. But if you can approach entrepreneurship from the perspective of what can I do now that is the version 1.0 of this business with a very small amount of capital to start providing something that people find useful. I mean, often this is referred to as the so-called minimum viable product. It's the sort of minimum product that you can get to market to start serving people and getting customer feedback. If you can do that, then that's a great way to start the process of learning that you do through selling, which is going to give you, the feedback you need. My experience is otherwise. You can invest a ton of money into something that you think is really cool, and customers think, well, yeah, what use is that to me? So it's really that customer feedback that tells you where to spend and where to invest.
The trait you're talking about is a certain humility that comes with any kind of commercial endeavor, right? A willingness to listen, learn, and adapt and change.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is one thing that's incredible about entrepreneurship. It's not just an opportunity to gain more freedom in terms of being able to choose your own direction in life and so forth, but you learn a lot about humility through the process. Yeah. You really do. It's an amazing way to become a more well-rounded and understanding person, because there is no room for your ego to get in the way.
For your ego, and for believing that you know the right way and that you got all the answers. You believe that, you're probably going to fail, right? So this is very, it's music to my ears to hear this, actually. I mean, it's very interesting because it kind of turns the popular impression on its head in a way.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many preconceptions about entrepreneurship in general. There's preconceptions about sales and selling, that selling is somehow sleazy and somehow, it's kind of you're trying to rip people off, when the truth is actually that selling is the learning process. Selling is how you try to understand people better and how you get feedback. It's the most important way to learn. And there's preconceptions about, as you say, kind of arrogance and so forth. And of course, entrepreneurs are trying to bring something new into the world, and consequently they disrupt things. So they are disruptive, and it is important to have vision and to have purpose. So there is that aspect to entrepreneurship, but there's a huge amount of humility that goes with that, because you have a vision, but how you actually realize that is dependent on what people need. And that's all about finding ways to be helpful, finding ways to provide values for others so that you can trade with them and get value in return.
This is just obvious. I just wrote an article yesterday, or published an article yesterday, called 5 Ways to Think Like a State. And the first way to think like a state is to assume that all relevant information is known unto you already.
Right.
That everything you need to know is already known. Like, states necessarily think this way, right? It's the opposite of the entrepreneur.
Yeah, absolutely the opposite. And what's interesting is the best way forward in entrepreneurship. In fact, this is something that Reid Hoffman, who founded LinkedIn, suggested, and I think it's a really great idea. The best way forward is you try and identify how you can test whether you're wrong as quickly as possible. So rather than the idea that you just talked about, the state, that we know everything and all is known, the entrepreneurial path is to say, well, we think this is going to work. What would be the fastest way that we can get to a failure point? Because you want to know as soon as possible, if this product is not going to work, I don't want to invest a penny more than I have to in it. I want to know as quickly as possible. So how can we determine that this is actually going to work? And so that's a completely different mindset to the one of the state that you're talking about.
Now, in the course of writing your book, did you study a lot of cases like LinkedIn and other high-profile cases and find similar sort of features of them, or are they all different?
Well, certainly, obviously, all the businesses are very different in terms of their particular industries and the challenges they face. But I think there are principles that you see a lot of entrepreneurs have kind of come to in different ways, and they all express it in different ways. But one of the things I've tried to do in the book is to distill those principles into things that are universal, that do apply to any industry. So my business was a consulting company, but the principles that I'm talking about are applicable in any business. Principles like, for example, one of the things that lots of entrepreneurs talk about in different ways is the change that you have to make, where you have to extract yourself from operations as an entrepreneur. And again, this is completely different to the mindset that we get as in school and as employees, that you kind of heroically take on more and more responsibility throughout your career. You get a promotion, and then you have more responsibility, and then you're taking on ever more. And in entrepreneurship, there's this switch that you have to make where actually your job is not to work in the business, but to work on the business. So you actually have to design the business, design the workflows, and then extract yourself. And the way that I describe it in my book, there's a chapter called Make Yourself Redundant. And that's really the idea, is that it's a totally different approach. You're looking at how you, as the entrepreneur, can create something that is able to run without you. And again, that's nothing like the kind of continual taking on responsibilities that you do in the sort of employee mindset.
When we were talking earlier too, you mentioned something very interesting about the difference between the reality of entrepreneurship, and one difference is, between the reality and the fable, is that in the fable, the entrepreneur is a kind of voracious predator, seeking to kill the competition, and having sort of an ambition that's radically negligent of human need. But in your description, you seem to suggest that it's actually the opposite, sort of a longing to cooperate and to be as valuable to other people as possible, and to learn from others. That is also a change, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. I think that's another sort of cliche or false idea about entrepreneurship, because for me, all of the successful entrepreneurs have a really clear sense of purpose and an idea of what they're trying to achieve. And of course, there's nothing wrong with wanting to make your fortune. That's great. I think that's a great thing. But that is not an inspiring vision for anybody that works for you or your customers or anybody else. The inspiring vision is how you're going to provide value, make the world better, do something that's going to improve life for people now. And so that's really what entrepreneurship is all about. It's about finding a way to change the world, to make the world better. And the business is the vehicle that you do that with. And this is the thing, is that entrepreneurs are the real revolutionaries, because entrepreneurship is a peaceful revolution. It's the way that the world gets better, and the way that all of the great things that we have now in terms of our technology, in terms of our quality of life, and all of the improvements that we enjoy in the kind of amazing times that we live in, compared to the vast majority of history, this incredible time of opportunity, that's all down to entrepreneurs.
What do you say to the people who would say, well, today regulations are so overweening, taxes are so much an imposition, it seems as if states are everywhere conspiring against genuine innovation. what's the point? Why should I go to all this effort? The barriers are actually just too large.
Yeah, I think that is an attitude that a lot of people have, and I can totally understand it, because I also see all the news stories in my Facebook feed and hear about, all of the bad things that are happening in terms of regulation and so forth. However, I think there's another side to that, which is that, there are lots of things holding you back, but at the same time, the kind of opportunity that we have now, even compared to a generation ago, it's just amazing what you can do as an entrepreneur. We have tools for basic things. Obviously, first of all, the internet is the most amazing opportunity, the ability to reach people in a way that just one generation ago never heard of. Then just things like the transparency that you can have in your business. It's so easy now to have real-time accounts and see exactly what's happening, really get a good understanding of what's going on in your operation. The kind of automation tools that we have to make all of your systems more and more efficient, more and more productive. And my thinking about it is that if you focus on the burden of regulation and so forth, and you let that stop you from going for it, then you've sort of lost without even trying. And I really think that it's a question of your own attitude, and that as well as the regulations and so forth, there are also fantastic things that make entrepreneurship much, much easier now than it ever was. And in fact, I'm also not 100% sure what to think about the level of control that we have now, because certainly historically, it's much easier to be an entrepreneur now than it would have been, say, 300 years ago, 400 years ago, when you had all these guilds and weird stuff going on there. And even one of the books that I think you, Jeffrey, put out either through Laissez-Faire or perhaps through liberty.me that I was reading, it's either is it called The God in the Machine or something, by Isabel Patterson?
Yeah. Isabel Patterson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was that book, but she was talking about going through France in the 1920s or 1930s, and she wanted to buy a car, I think. And she talks about these insane regulations that she had to get. It's just like the most ridiculous thing just to buy a car and move it through France. So, every age has had their own problems, and I'm not even sure now that we can say we really have it tough compared to some entrepreneurs dealing with those kind of situations.
I was amazed by that passage too, actually, and it goes on for pages, right?
Yeah,
it's hilarious and maddening and shocking. You're right. It seems like buying a car in the 1920s in France was worse than it might have been to get a car in Russia in the 1950s.
Yeah,
it's an amazing story. Well, and it's nice too that you bring out the opportunities we have now too. There's other things that another writer, Rose Wilder Lane, talks about in her work about in the 19th century how difficult it was to overcome sort of the natural privation of nature, which is always sort of surrounding you with catastrophic weather, severe issues over travel. There's sort of danger around every corner, none of which we really face now. I mean, the only real big threat we face now is government regulations.
Yeah. And even that is also, we're also living in this time of incredible growth, not in so much in the States, but, in Africa and in China, obviously. In the last 10 years, amazing steps forward in terms of poverty reduction in Africa, and amazing steps forward in terms of economic development around the world. And not only that, but it's getting easier to move and go other places and work, obviously, through the internet. So I think wherever you are to start with, if you sort of look at the situation with regulation and bureaucracy in your own country and think, oh, there's no point in even trying, then you have no idea what opportunities will open up to you if you start a business and then later down the line, move, go somewhere else and so forth. I mean, I had a business in the UK for 10 years, and now I've sold that business, and, I'm pretty much a perpetual traveler, and, we go around the world and write in the sunshine, because my partner's business, she works online as well. So, we're both able to be wherever.
That's amazing. Sounds like a dream. Yeah. So how much personal sacrifice can a person expect to undergo when at the very early stages of a business? I'm asking this, speaking as now an entrepreneur of, I guess, going on eight to 9 months now. It's stretched me to the limit. Is that normal?
Well, it certainly was my experience. I mean, I have to say the first at least 2 to 3 years were brutal, really brutal. And, I really feel for you, and I know what that period is like. And I also don't know what Sorry?
Well, you know what, Jake, though, what's neat to me about it, the whole thing, is that I do think we all tend to underestimate our capacities. And, when you really put yourself to the test in a commercial sector like this, in a risky venture, you have to dig deep, and you discover things about yourself you didn't really know.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think the two things I want to say about it are this, for people considering it. Number one, yes, it's brutal, especially the first year. And number two, I think this counts as, for me, certainly a peak experience in life. This is one of those things that you really want to experience, because, as you say, Jeffrey, you will find out things about yourself and your capabilities. You actually feel incredibly alive, because you are doing something that is so outside your comfort zone and such an amazing, sort of fulfilling way to live, that even though it is really tough in the first couple of years, it really is a peak experience, and it's really, really an amazing thing to take advantage of the opportunity that we have to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it does make you feel suddenly. I feel suddenly very privileged to hear you say that. It's been exciting for me. What's interesting too, you test the value of your own skills, and you're putting yourself to this. We all have an impression of things about us that are valuable and what's not valuable, right? We go into it with this preconceived notion, but then the real commercial world kind of scrambles that a little bit, and you suddenly find out what actually is valuable about you, and what you thought was valuable is not actually valuable, So that's been a very interesting thing for me.
Yeah, the way I think about it is, however much preparation you think you can do for entrepreneurship, you have no control over the opportunity flow. Once you get started, things start happening, opportunities start presenting themselves to you, and things that you didn't think were going to work, and things that you did think were going to work don't work, and you have to go with the flow. And as you say, that is what forces you to grow as a person, because you really are then put in situations where it's like, wow, I guess I'm doing this now. Find out what you're capable of doing, and that's an awesome experience.
In a strange way, I mean, isn't there something more real or more sort of reality embracing about entrepreneurship than practically any other life pursuit that you can think of?
I think so. I think one of those situations, there's a quote by Ray Bradbury, the science fiction author, he talks about throwing yourself off a cliff and building wings on the way down. That's kind of the experience when you start entrepreneurship. You can prepare for it to a certain degree, but it's exhilarating in that sense too. And in that exhilaration is an amazing experience that, as I said, I really think everyone should give it a try. And the amazing thing is that everyone could be entrepreneurs. We could live in a world of entrepreneurs, just one vast interconnected web of independent contractors working for themselves, doing whatever they wanted, joining up for projects, joining up together when it's a good thing to do. That's totally feasible, and I think the world would be a much better place if it were like that.
That's a beautiful vision. So let's get this video out there so people have enough time to download your book. Again, the name of it is
It's becoming an entrepreneur, how to find freedom and fulfillment as a business owner.
Yeah, becoming an entrepreneur, how to find freedom and fulfillment as a business owner. And your guide on negotiation is coming out on liberty.me within the week, I think.
I'm not sure of the timetable. I'm not sure.
Well, yeah, I think should be rather soon. But it's been a real pleasure to talk to you. I'm sorry we've had so many fits and starts on this hangout, but it's been lovely to finally connect with you, and I look forward to talking to you again real soon, okay?
Thanks so much, Jeffrey. It's been great fun.
You take care, my friend.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to The Voluntary Life. If you have feedback about the show, please email jake@thevoluntarylife.com. If you enjoyed this program, please share the podcast with your friends or click the donate button on thevoluntarylife.com.